Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Good morning. Hola. Warm greetings from Zihuatanejo, Mexico. We are here for one more week. And we are, what's the word? Recovering from a wonderful Memorial Day weekend in here, or let's say strengthening. Anyways, have the sacred bell today. We'll get a couple of rings to invoke.
Hola.
So arriving here fully, just like Runadera arrived here fully. Checking in with ourselves, checking in with each other. And today, wanted to invoke some boundaries, some boundary work. It's a beautiful concept, primarily psychological, but this being soul's enterprise and us being for spiritual advancement, wanted to take a few moments and talk about all of the levels. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, with boundaries.
And spiritual can be energetic if the spiritual word turns you off.
Energetic being a part of all of them. So, let's start with the physical. Pretty simple. Where are we in relation physically? Where are our boundaries?
Yeah, so a physical boundary could be like, would you like a hug?
And then on the subtler level, when Kunadera talks about the energy, one fascinating physical way to look is just to feel the difference between this distance physically and this distance. Sometimes close up, we can get into like a fight or flight response and feel the difference when the boundary's here, even through technology, right? Or as the boundary moves. We're just talking technically physical, but actually, of course, it is energetic. And then the next level, emotional. Ooh.
Emotional boundaries. What do we want to say about that? Well, the example that comes up for me, even though it's going to be about a parent and a child, just take into consideration that we were all children at one point or another, and even our parents were children at one point or another, right? So a parent who maybe a young child starts to cry, and as an adult you don't really see it as a reason to cry. Many of us have been told, why are you crying? There's no reason, right? Well, you're actually violating the child's emotional boundary. You're not totally in their world or their experience. And we forget sometimes, some people do, that an adult and a child have different emotional capabilities. And so that's a perfect example of emotional boundary violation.
Perfect example. And as we talked about last week with the parts work, we still have our inner children with us. So enough of those violations and even our emotional boundaries start seeping into our, where are we? There we are. Mental boundaries. Mental, how we shape reality, how we process reality, right? And then of course how we communicate reality. So physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, and then put those together, we get mental boundaries, right? All sorts of boundaries to be exploring. And then, like Grunadera was saying, that unifying chord of the energy with boundaries.
Yeah.
Or the spiritual component of boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, I think of them as slightly separate, like two different things, with spiritual and energetic, although they're super closely related. But spiritual boundaries gets a little bit more into spiritual abuse and different forms of spiritual abuse. It's just a little bit stronger in a way, or a little bit more specific and focused energy violation, if you will, or boundary violation, calling it spiritual versus, you're right, energetic is kind of in all of them. Yeah.
So we could talk about boundaries for hours and hours and hours, and we love talking about boundaries for hours and hours and hours and hours. It's just not necessarily invocation. But what we wanted to do is provide this little overview, because the key that I've found, of course, with boundaries is the awareness. Just being aware of it. And like I pointed out earlier, just feeling the difference between this little boundary between Grunadera and I, this little boundary, even on all the levels, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, just the subtlety. So expanding our awareness can really yield a lot for our boundaries exploration.
Yep. Awareness. A lot goes back to awareness, which is why connection is the first word on Soul's Enterprise tagline. And that's why we meet every day. So join us again to connect with ourselves, connect with each other, collaborate, and share consciousness.
Much love.
Hasta
Much
luego.
love.